The story begins years ago in South Korea, where a young man named Yang who lives with his father, Sergeant Park. After the premature loss of his mother, Park raises his son alone. At night, he leaves him with his own mother and goes to work as a highway patrolman. One day the sergeant stops a car and asks the driver to roll down the window. Inside he sees two young people, seemingly in a hypnotic state, and orders them to take a breathalyzer test. Instead, the young driver, wearing a ring shaped like a crow, accelerates. Park grabs the car door, but the driver attacks him, throwing him onto the road and leaving him critically injured. The sergeant is rushed to the hospital, but his chances of survival are slim. Fearing he will lose his father just as he lost his mother, Yang who runs to a church and begins to pray, begging God to save him. A young priest sits beside him and prays with the boy, telling him that with faith, anything is possible. Yang who believes this, and later returns home to wait for news with his grandmother. The boy falls asleep, and in his dream, Park appears before him, telling him to be good and help those in need. Yang who doesn't understand his father's words, but Park says goodbye and holds his son's right hand, which emanates a strong luminous energy. Yang who wakes up in the middle of the night to the devastating news that his father did not survive his injuries. The next morning, a funeral is held for Sergeant Park. The young priest appears to offer his condolences, but Yang who feels betrayed. Overcome with anger, he throws a crucifix at the priest's face, declaring that God did not hear his prayers. In the present day, Yang who has become an undefeated MMA middleweight champion. He travels to the United States to face John White, an American fighter determined to win his title. As soon as the referee signals the start of the fight, John kicks the champion, but Yang who dodges and retaliates with a single punch. The blow knocks his opponent out, but Yang who is consumed with a blind fury, furiously attacking John until the referee intervenes, saving the challenger. Yang who wins another victory. After the fight, he travels back to Seoul. On the plane, he falls asleep and once again dreams of his deceased father. They are in a mausoleum, and Park calls his son to follow him to the end of a corridor. There, Yang who sees an altar with a crucifix and still resentful toward God, he tries to throw the sacred object away. However, it sticks to his hand and a flame begins to burn his arm. This terrifying vision causes the fighter to wake up on the plane. When he sees his hand bleeding, he realizes the dream was real. Despite the injury, Yang who covers it with a bandage and goes to his apartment to rest. In the middle of the night, a frightening shadow-like entity appears and torments him. Yang who cannot open his eyes or move, but when the entity sees the wound on his hand, it flees. He wakes up to his bleeding hand and heads to a hospital. After some tests, the doctors say there's nothing wrong and suggest he seek help elsewhere. The fighter has no idea what is happening, but his driver tells him that something similar happened to his niece, Hong Jin. At age 15, she suffered from insomnia and her eyes would bleed until she went completely blind. Her mother took her to a shaman, who noticed a strong supernatural power in her and trained her to control it. Though she never regained her sight, she can now see the supernatural world and uses her power to help others. Although he doesn't believe in such things, Yang who asks to meet her. She lives in a sanctuary far from the city. Upon his arrival, Yang who meets Hong Jin and shows her the wound, asking what it is. Through her supernatural vision, she sees a luminous energy in his hand and tells him to go to a church on the other side of Seoul for more answers. Yang who decides to go. When he arrives at the entrance, a flock of crows blocks his path. He finds this strange and tries to enter through the back, just as two priests, An and Choi, are performing an exorcism to save a possessed young man. Mid-ritual, the young man breaks free from his chair and attacks Father An, but Choi manages to pull him away. However, the man leaps toward him and spews dark slime, causing Father Choi to flee in desperation. The possessed man then moves to finish off Father An, when Yang who stops him and throws the man aside. He tries to hold him down, but when he uses his injured hand, a white flame begins to burn the young man's head. Seeing this, Father An seizes the opportunity, pouring holy water and causing the flame to grow and burn the evil spirit. The young man is freed from possession, and Yang who realizes the flame came from the wound on his hand. Upon closer inspection, Father An says it's a stigmata, a mark similar to the wounds of Jesus Christ. He explains that stigmata can grant abilities like healing or casting out evil spirits. Even though he refuses to believe it, Yang who invites the priest to his home to learn more. Once there, Father An says a prayer to ward off evil spirits. He then enters Yang who's room and sees a photo of the young man with his father. It's revealed that Father An is the same priest who prayed with Yang who years ago, but he decides to keep this a secret. Before leaving, he gives Yang who a cross necklace for protection. Upon his return home, the priest calls the Vatican, reporting that he has found evidence of a bishop of darkness in Seoul. This bishop is a servant of evil spirits, responsible for choosing victims and possessing them for his malevolent purposes. It's unknown to the priest that the bishop of darkness is Ji Shin, owner of a nightclub called Babylon and the very person responsible for killing Sergeant Park. That night, Ji Shin heads to his club and through a hidden door, finds an altar dedicated to the sacred serpent. In exchange for immortality and eternal youth, Ji Shin offers the souls of his victims, operating in the shadows of soul. Meanwhile, his path is about to cross with Father Ons, who goes to the archdiocese in search of a new assistant, only to be refused by the other priests who no longer perform exorcisms. Despite his experience, Father On knows he can't fight the Bishop of Darkness alone. Unsure what to do, he returns home to find Yang Hu waiting outside. The fighter found his address through a church secretary and explains he still needs the priest's help. Even with the protection ritual performed in his apartment, he can't sleep, and the stigmata on his hand continues to worsen. The priest gives Yang Hu a rosary blessed by the Pope, which will serve as protection. Father On tells him that the only real weapon against evil is faith, but Yang Hu reveals he hasn't believed in God since his father died. Hearing this, Father On shares that he also lost his faith when his own mentor passed away. However, over time he realized that God's intentions aren't always clear at first, but faith can provide answers. Since then, Father On has been using what he learned to help others, though he doesn't know how long he can continue. Yang Hu, now admiring the priest, offers him a ride. On the way, Yang Hu recalls the exorcism at the church where Father On was almost killed. He tells the priest it's too risky to act alone and offers to help, but Father On refuses, not wanting to put him in danger. Finally, the priest tells Yang Hu to stop at an apartment building, where he has another call about a possession. Before leaving, he thanks Yang Hu and heads into the building. In that moment, Yang Hu sees an impression of his father through the priest. Fearing for his safety, Yang Hu decides to follow and help, covering the stigmata on his hand with a glove. Seeing that Yang Hu won't give up, the priest accepts his help. They go to the apartment of a young mother whose face is injured as if she had been attacked. She points upstairs and says her daughter, Su Jin, is possessed. The two go to her room. Before entering, Father On draws a cross on the door with a pencil made from a sacred olive tree to prevent the spirit from escaping. They enter and find the young woman, who acts surprised and asks what's going on. The priest suspects she's faking it and holds a crucifix in front of her, but Su Jin places her hands on it and nothing happens. She claims her mother has severe depression and inflicted the wounds on her own face. Still not convinced, Father On performs another test, touching another cross to the young woman's face, but again she is unaffected. The priest calls Yang Hu outside and says that despite these signs, the evil spirit might be hiding inside Su Jin. To test his theory, Father On runs toward the girl and with Yang Hu's help, pours holy water directly down her throat. Just as he feared, the holy water takes effect, and the young woman begins to vomit blood, revealing the entity inside her. With an evil look on its face, the creature attacks the priest, pushing him against the wall. Yang Hu rushes to help and tries to hold the young woman down, but she levitates and pushes him into the ceiling. Yang Hu looks at her eyes and sees a red glow. The entity reveals it's responsible for killing his father. This enrages Yang Hu, who shoves the evil spirit onto the bed and begins to attack the girl. Father On is forced to pull him back, and the two struggle while the evil spirit encourages the fighter to succumb to his anger. Seeing that he is losing his mind, Yang Hu calms down, removes his glove, and holds the possessed girl's face, using the power of the stigmata on his hand. As he does so, Su Jin's head is burned by flames until Father On pours the bottle of holy water, expelling the evil spirit for good. After the exorcism, the priest talks to Su Jin, asking if she interacted with anyone in the last few days. He suspects she met the Bishop of Darkness, who then put the spirit inside her. Before she can answer, Su Jin starts crying tears of blood and feels a sharp pain in her throat. Far away, Ji Shin performs a ritual at the sacred serpent's altar, using a voodoo doll to attack Su Jin. Seeing the young woman's suffering, Father On says a prayer to block the dark magic. His faith causes Ji Shin's ring and the voodoo doll to burn with white flames, breaking the dark bishop's connection with Su Jin. After this incident, Father On lets the young woman rest and returns home with Yang Hu. The two also decide to rest, and during dinner they talk about their lives. The priest asks why the fighter wanted to help him. Yang Hu reveals that before his father died, he appeared in his dreams, telling him to help those in need. Because of this, even though he doesn't believe in the supernatural or God, he felt he needed to help Father On, fulfilling his father's last wish. As the two continue their conversation, Ji Shin performs another ritual, this time sacrificing a crow and asking the sacred serpent to change his appearance. Taking the form of Father Choi, he goes to a Catholic orphanage, where he finds a young man named Ho Sok being attacked by his classmates. After the fight, Ji Shin approaches Ho Sok and promises to make him stronger so he can defend himself. The young man accepts, and the dark bishop performs a ritual, forcing several evil spirits into Ho Sok's body. Afterward, Ji Shin goes to Father On's apartment and sees Yang Hu leaving for his motorcycle. The man calls out, claiming to be On's former assistant, and warns Yang Hu not to trust him, saying the priest is actually an evil entity. The young fighter doesn't believe him and goes home, but the words still leave him with doubt. The next morning, Father An gets a call from the orphanage saying that one of the students is possessed. He tries to call Yang Hu, but because of the suspicions Ji Shin planted, the fighter doesn't answer. A few minutes later he gets another call, this time from his manager with a new fight offer in the US. Meanwhile, Father An arrives at the orphanage and sees 4 nuns praying around the boy, who is completely possessed. With no time to lose, the priest holds him, touches the cross to his face, and begins a prayer to remove the entity. The exorcism seems to work, but the room's door closes on its own as the boy gets up. Ho Sok lets out a powerful scream that affects the brain of one of the nuns, causing her to faint with blood coming out of her ears. Unaware of what is happening, Yang Hu listens to the manager's proposal to earn millions for a new fight. However, the fighter senses that something bad is about to happen. He not only turns down the offer but also calls Father An's cell phone, which a nun from the orphanage answers. After finding out what happened, Yang Hu races to the scene to help his friend. He has to hurry because Father An is already exhausted and being attacked by Ho Sok, who is punching him in the face. To save the priest, one of the nuns takes his crucifix and tries to drive away the entity inside the boy. However, she isn't strong enough and Ho Sok jumps at her and grabs her by the neck. Just as it seems all is lost, Yang Hu arrives at the last minute and throws the young man away from the nun. Again he's forced to use the stigmata on his hand, placing it on the boy's face, which causes a white flame to burn his skin. Finally he pours Father An's holy water, making the spirits inside the boy burn in the sacred fire. At last Ho Sok is free and Father An and the nun are safe. After this, the 3 ask the young man what happened, but he only remembers seeing a man dressed as a priest coming toward him. Father An suspects this is the Bishop of Darkness he's looking for and decides to continue his search. He and Yang Hu let the boy rest, but as they leave the room the other children from the orphanage hug the fighter, thanking him. Yang Hu is both surprised and happy to be fulfilling his late father's wish to help those in need. On the way back he apologizes to the priest for his delay. An, however, is happy to see that the fighter is becoming an emissary of God. Yang Hu still can't believe it, but the priest believes that the young man was sent by the Almighty to fight the darkness. Despite this victory, Ji Shin is still at large and returns to the altar of the sacred serpent for another ritual. With that, he takes control of one of the orphanage's guard dogs and frees it from its leash. Shortly after, Ho Sok is sleeping when he hears a voice calling his name. The young man gets up to see who it is, but when he leaves the room he encounters the dog which, possessed by Ji Shin, attacks him. After this evil act, Ji Shin offers the boy soul and in return receives one of the snake's fangs, which contains a powerful poison. Shortly after, Father An gets a call from the orphanage, where a nurse tells him about the tragedy. He and Yang Hu immediately go to the morgue, where they find the young man's body with bite marks on his neck. Shocked, the priest says a prayer for Ho Sok. At the same time, Yang Hu sees an unknown man on the other side of the room. The fighter suspects he is the Dark Bishop and runs after him, leaving Father An alone. Soon after, the bag where Ho Sok's body is stored begins to move, and when the priest opens it, the boy gets up and asks An for help. Overcome with guilt, the priest embraces the boy, unaware that it is an illusion created by Ji Shin, who appears in the room and attacks him with his poisoned fangs. Nearby, Yang Hu hears the priest scream and runs back to the morgue, where he finds him being held captive by Ji Shin. The villain offers to spare the priest's life if Yang Hu surrenders the power of the stigmata. The young man agrees, but Father An doesn't want Yang Hu to lose his powers and prefers to sacrifice himself, striking his own face with the poisoned fangs. Within seconds the poison spreads and Yang Hu rushes to get him to safety. They go to Father Choi's house. Upon seeing An wounded, Choi puts him in his bed and says a prayer to try to reverse the curse. Just as he did with his parents, Yang Hu sees someone he cares about to die and goes to the chapel to make one last request to God. Before the image of the crucified Jesus, he asks for Father An to be spared, but despite his prayers nothing happens. Once again Yang Hu feels abandoned and decides to go after the Dark Bishop and save his friend on his own. Before he leaves, Father Choi gives him a gift, a cassock blessed by the Vatican, which will serve as his armor against the forces of darkness. Yang Hu obeys and after putting on the garment under his clothes, he leaves on his motorcycle for Su Jin's house. There he asks her where Ji Shin is and she shows him a card for the Babylon nightclub. After discovering the location, Yang Hu speeds toward the nightclub on his motorcycle. At the entrance, he's immediately confronted by Ji Shin's guards, all possessed by evil spirits. Yang Hu uses his martial arts skills to fight back, blocking attacks and delivering quick punches and kicks. A fierce fight breaks out, but despite his abilities he's soon overwhelmed and must change his strategy. Gaining some distance, the fighter tears off his outer clothes, revealing his cassock. He wets the stigmata on his hand with holy water and re-engages, striking the guards' faces. This combination causes the evil spirits to burst into flames. With the guards defeated, Yang Hu pursues Ji Xin, who is in his hiding place, pleading with the sacred serpent for help. The entity demands an even greater sacrifice, ordering Ji Xin to strike his own heart with the poisoned fang. He falls into a well and re-emerges moments later as a monstrous human-snake hybrid. In this new form, the villain challenges Yang Hu. The fighter tries to burn Ji Xin with the stigmata's power, but the energy has no effect. The entity pushes him against a wall, leaving him bewildered. As Yang Hu gets up, Ji Xin launches a surprise attack, biting his shoulder and knocking him unconscious. Yang Hu awakens in an empty space, where a portal of light opens and the spirit of his deceased father, Park, appears. Yang Hu, moved by the reunion, embraces him, wishing to stay. Park tells him it's not his time and that he has a mission to complete. He holds his son's hand, bringing him back to life and awakening an even greater energy in his palm. The moment Yang Hu returns to the real world, the stigmata emits an immense power, creating a white flame in his hand. He then challenges Ji Xin to a final battle, and the two rivals face each other on equal footing. During the intense fight, the villain strikes Yang Hu with his claws, but Yang Hu counters with his fist of flames. With the Dark Bishop weakened, the fighter concentrates all his energy and with a single punch knocks Ji Xin to the ground. The fight ends, and Yang Hu uses the flames to melt the poisoned fangs, saving Father An's life. As he prepares to leave, the sacred serpent reveals itself in a form covered in human arms. It doesn't attack Yang Hu, instead it takes Ji Xin's body back to the well as punishment for his failure. After this difficult battle, Yang Hu returns to Father Choi's house and finds Father An completely healed. Days later, Father Choi receives a letter from Father An. He's at the Vatican with Yang Hu, who has agreed to train as an exorcist. In addition to the letter, the priest left his cross necklace for Choi, knowing that evil will return and that he needs to be prepared. If you enjoyed the recap, please leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.